What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest legends walks onto a morning talk show and gets blindsided by a host who thinks she can tear him down on live television? In just 33 seconds, Lara Spencer went from smiling morning show host to the most hated person in America after what she said to Harrison Ford. This wasn't supposed to go down like this. Harrison Ford, the man who gave us Indiana Jones and Han Solo, agreed to sit down for what should have been a friendly chat about his latest project. Instead, he found himself in the middle of an ambush that would leave the entire Good Morning America panel speechless and viewers at home picking their jaws up off the floor. The morning started normally enough. The Good Morning America studio was buzzing with its usual energy. Cameras were positioned perfectly. The lights were bright and warm. Lara Spencer sat at the desk with her signature smile, flanked by Michael Strawn and Robin Roberts. George Stephanopoulos was reviewing his notes off to the side. Everything seemed routine. Then Harrison Ford walked out. The audience applauded as he made his way to the interview couch. He gave a small wave, that classic Harrison Ford half-smile on his face. He sat down, adjusted his jacket, and waited for the conversation to begin. "Harrison Ford, welcome to Good Morning America," Lara Spencer said, her voice bright and cheerful. "We're so excited to have you here." "Thanks for having me," Harrison replied, nodding politely. "So, let's jump right in," Lara continued. "You've got a new film coming out, and everyone's talking about it. But I have to ask, at your age, are you still doing your own stunts? Or have you finally accepted that maybe it's time to let the younger guys handle the dangerous stuff?" The smile on Harrison's face flickered for just a moment. Michael Strawn shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Robin Roberts glanced at Lara with a look that said, "Where are you going with this?" "Well, I do what I can," Harrison said carefully. "I've always believed in giving audiences something real. If I can do the stunt safely, I'll do it." Right, Lara said, waving her hand dismissively. "But come on, Harrison. You're not getting any younger. I mean, how old are you now? 70-something? 80? Don't you think it's a little, I don't know, desperate to be jumping around like you're still in your 30s? The studio went quiet. You could hear the camera operators breathing. Robin Roberts' eyes went wide. George Stephanopoulos looked up from his notes with visible concern. Harrison Ford sat perfectly still, his jaw tightening. "Desperate?" he repeated slowly. "Oh, don't take it the wrong way," Lara said with a laugh that sounded forced even to her. "I just mean, you've had such an incredible career. You've done it all. Isn't it time to, step back? Let the new generation take over? I mean, how much longer can you really keep doing this?" Michael Strawn jumped in, clearly trying to redirect. "Harrison, I think what Lara means is that your dedication is impressive. The fact that you're still so committed to your craft is incredible." "No, Michael, that's not what I'm saying," Lara interrupted, turning to look at him. "I'm saying he's old. We all see it. The audience sees it. Why are we pretending otherwise?" Robin Roberts actually gasped. "Lara!" she said sharply. But Lara wasn't done. She turned back to Harrison, leaning forward as if she was about to share some profound wisdom. "Look, Harrison, I'm just being honest here, and I think honesty is important. You're not the action star you used to be. Your movies aren't doing the numbers they used to do. Maybe it's time to accept that your time has passed and make room for actors who are actually relevant in today's world." The silence that followed was deafening. Harrison Ford stared at Lara Spencer for a long moment. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes. Something cold. Something that made everyone watching realize this was not going to end well. "You know what's interesting?" Harrison finally said, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. "I've been doing interviews for over 40 years. I've sat across from some of the best journalists in the world, some of the smartest, most prepared, most respectful people in this industry. And then there's you." Lara's smile faltered. "Excuse me?" "You heard me?" Harrison continued. I came here as a courtesy. I came here to talk about a film that hundreds of people worked incredibly hard on, people who deserve to have their work celebrated. And instead, you've decided to use this time to take cheap shots at my age and my career. I was just asking questions, Lara said defensively. That's my job. No, Harrison said firmly. Your job is to interview people, to have conversations, to show some basic level of respect for your guests. What you're doing right now. This isn't journalism. This is you trying to make yourself feel important by tearing down someone else. George Stephanopoulos stepped closer to the desk. Harrison, maybe we can just, let him speak, George, Robin Roberts said quietly. She was looking at Lara with an expression that was part shock, part disappointment. Harrison turned his attention back to Lara. You want to talk about relevance? Let's talk about it. I've made films that people still watch decades later. Films that meant something. Films that inspired generations of filmmakers and audiences. What have you done, Lara? You read off a teleprompter and giggle at celebrity gossip. And you have the audacity to sit there and tell me that my time has passed? Now wait just a minute, Lara said, her voice rising. You don't get to come on my show and insult me. Your show? Harrison laughed, but there was no humor in it. This isn't your show, Lara. This is good. Morning America, a show that's been on the air for decades. A show with a legacy. You're just someone who happens to be sitting in that chair right now. And honestly, based on what I've seen this morning, I don't think you'll be sitting there much longer. Michael Strawn put his head in his hands. Robin Roberts looked like she wanted to crawl under the desk. George Stephanopoulos was frozen, unsure whether to intervene or let this play out. Lara's face had gone red. How dare you, she said. I have worked incredibly hard to get where I am. I have earned my place at this desk. Have you? Harrison asked. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've mistaken cruelty for honesty and arrogance for confidence. Those aren't the qualities of a good interviewer, Lara. Those are the qualities of a bully. A bully? Lara stood up, her voice shaking with anger. I am not a bully. I asked you legitimate questions about your age and your career, and you can't handle it. Because you're too sensitive. Harrison stood up as well, slowly removing his microphone. No, Lara. You made personal attacks disguised as questions. There's a difference. A good interviewer would know that. But you're not a good interviewer, are you? You're just someone who likes the sound of their own voice and the feeling of power that comes with having a microphone. Get out, Lara said suddenly. Get out of my studio. Gladly, Harrison replied. He handed his microphone to a stunned production assistant and started walking toward the exit. Robin Roberts stood up quickly. Harrison, please, wait. I'm so sorry. This got completely out of hand. Harrison paused and turned back to face Robin. His expression softened slightly. Robin, you have nothing to apologize for. You've always been a class act. But you might want to have a conversation with your colleague here about what professionalism actually means. He looked at Michael Strawn. Michael, always a pleasure. Michael nodded, looking relieved that Harrison wasn't lumping him in with Lara's behavior. Take care, Harrison. George Stephanopoulos stepped forward. Harrison, on behalf of Good Morning America, I apologize. This should never have happened. Harrison gave a slight nod. I appreciate that, George. But maybe the apology should come from the person who actually caused the problem. All eyes turned to Lara Spencer. She stood there, arms crossed, her face still flushed with anger and embarrassment. I'm not apologizing for doing my job. Then we have nothing more to discuss, Harrison said simply. He turned and walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the now silent studio. The cameras were still rolling. The audience sat in stunned silence. Nobody knew what to say or do. As Harrison reached the door, Lara called out one more time. You're making a huge mistake walking out of here, Harrison. Do you know how many people would kill for this? Opportunity? Harrison stopped at the door, but didn't turn around. For a moment, it looked like he might just keep walking. But then he looked back over his shoulder, his eyes meeting Lara's one final time. The mistake, he said quietly, was coming here in the first place. And with that, Harrison Ford walked off the Good Morning America set. The moment the door closed behind him, chaos erupted. Robin Roberts immediately turned to Lara. "What were you thinking?" she demanded. "What on earth were you thinking?" "I was asking tough questions," Lara insisted. "That's what we're supposed to do." "Tough questions?" Michael Strawn shook his head in disbelief. "Lara, you attacked the man. You called him old, irrelevant, and desperate, on live television, to his face." "I was being honest," Lara said, but her voice had lost some of its conviction. "No," George Stephanopoulos said firmly. "You were being cruel. There's a difference between asking challenging questions and launching personal attacks. What you did crossed every line of professional journalism." Lara looked around at her co-hosts, seeming to realize for the first time that she had no support. "You're all overreacting," she said weakly. "Are we?" Robin asked. "Lara, Harrison Ford is one of the most respected actors in Hollywood. He's a legend, and you just humiliated him on national television. Do you understand what you've done?" In the control room, producers were frantically trying to figure out how to handle the situation. The show was still live. Millions of people had just watched Harrison Ford walk off the set after being insulted by one of the hosts. This was a public relations nightmare. Back on set, Michael Strawn was the first to try to salvage the situation. He looked directly into the camera. "Folks, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back." As soon as they cut to commercial, the set exploded with activity. Producers rushed onto the floor. People were shouting into headsets. Assistants were running in every direction. Lara Spencer stood at the desk, suddenly looking very small and very alone. Robin Roberts walked away without another word, clearly too angry to even look at her colleague. George Stephanopoulos was deep in conversation with producers, no doubt discussing damage control. Michael Strawn approached Lara. "You need to apologize," he said quietly. "Publicly. Right now. As soon as we come back from commercial." "I didn't do anything wrong," Lara said, but her voice cracked. "Lara," Michael said, his voice gentle but firm. "I like you. We've worked together for a long time. But what you did out there was wrong. You know it was wrong. Everyone watching knows it was wrong. You need to own up to it." Lara's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. "He insulted me too," she said. "He called me a bully." "Because you were being one," Michael said simply. "Look, I get it. Sometimes interviews get tense. Sometimes there's conflict. But you started this, Lara. You went after him the moment he sat down. You attacked his age, his career, his relevance. What did you think was going to happen?" A producer with a headset rushed over. "We're back in 30 seconds. Lara, we need you to address what just happened. Apologize. Express regret. Something." Lara took a shaky breath and nodded. The cameras came back on. Michael Strawn spoke first. "Welcome back to Good Morning America. As you just saw, we had an unfortunate situation with our guest, Harrison Ford. Lara, would you like to say something?" All eyes turned to Lara Spencer. She looked into the camera, her professional smile nowhere to be found. She looked tired, shaken, small. "I want to apologize," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Speak up," a producer called from off camera. Lara cleared her throat. "I want to apologize to Harrison Ford and to our viewers. I asked some questions that were inappropriate and disrespectful. That's not who I am, and that's not what Good Morning America stands for. I'm sorry." But even as she said the words, they rang hollow. Everyone watching could tell. The damage was done. Robin Roberts, who had returned to the desk, spoke next. "Harrison Ford is a consummate professional and a Hollywood icon. He deserves better than what happened here this morning. We all do. The message was clear. Robin wasn't just talking about the audience. She was talking about herself and her co-hosts. They deserved better than to be associated with what Lara had done. George Stephanopoulos tried to move the show forward. We have a lot more coming up, including, but nobody was really listening anymore. The show continued, but the energy was gone. The chemistry between the hosts, usually so natural and warm, was strained and awkward. Lara barely spoke for the rest of the broadcast. When she did, her co-hosts' responses were brief and professional, lacking the usual warmth and banter. In the studio audience, people were whispering to each other. Some were checking their phones, already seeing the clips of the confrontation spreading across social media. Others just sat in shocked silence, processing what they had witnessed. Behind the scenes, the real fallout was just beginning. Network executives were being called. Publicists were crafting statements. Legal teams were being consulted. This wasn't just a bad interview. This was a career-defining moment, and not in a good way. For Lara Spencer, the realization was starting to sink in. In trying to make herself look tough and uncompromising, she had instead revealed herself to be petty and cruel. In trying to diminish Harrison Ford, she had only diminished herself. Michael Strawn glanced at Lara during another commercial break. She was staring at her hands, her earlier defiance completely gone. He wanted to say something, to offer some comfort. But what was there to say? She had made her choice. She had chosen to attack a guest, to be cruel instead of curious, to tear down instead of build up. And Harrison Ford had made his choice too. He had chosen dignity over tolerance. He had chosen to walk away rather than sit there and be insulted. He had chosen self-respect over playing nice for the cameras. Robin Roberts caught Michael's eye and gave a small, sad shake of her head. They both knew this morning would be remembered for a long time, not for any of the planned segments or feel-good stories, but for the moment when one of Hollywood's biggest stars stood up to a host who thought she could treat him however she wanted. The show eventually ended. The cameras stopped rolling. The studio lights dimmed. The audience filed out, still buzzing with disbelief and excitement at what they had witnessed. Lara Spencer sat at the desk long after everyone else had left, staring at the empty chair where Harrison Ford had been sitting just an hour earlier. She replayed the interview in her mind, hearing her own words, seeing the looks on her co-hosts' faces, remembering the cold fury in Harrison's eyes. She had thought she was being edgy, provocative, unafraid to ask the tough questions. But really, she had just been mean. And in being mean to Harrison Ford, she had shown everyone exactly who she was. Harrison Ford, meanwhile, had already left the building. He walked out with his head held high, his dignity intact, leaving behind a studio full of people who had learned an important lesson about respect, professionalism, and the consequences of cruelty. The interview that was supposed to promote his new film had turned into something else entirely. A moment where a legendary actor reminded everyone that there are some things more important than publicity. Things like self-respect, like refusing to accept disrespect, no matter how famous you are or how big the platform is. In just 33 seconds, Lara Spencer had destroyed what should have been a simple, pleasant interview. 33 seconds of attacking Harrison Ford's age and relevance. 33 seconds that revealed her true character. 33 seconds that changed everything. And Harrison Ford had responded not with anger or rage, but with calm, measured truth. He had called out her behavior for exactly what it was. He had refused to play along with her game. And when she wouldn't back down, when she wouldn't apologize, when she continued to defend her cruelty as honesty, he had simply walked away. Because that's what you do when someone doesn't respect you. You don't argue. You don't plead. You don't try to convince them to treat you better. You simply remove yourself from the situation. You walk away with your head held high and your dignity intact. The Good Morning America set stood empty now, a silent witness to what had transpired. The chairs where the confrontation had taken place looked ordinary, innocent even. But everyone who had been there, everyone who had watched, would remember. They would remember the moment when Lara Spencer's mask slipped and revealed the person underneath. The person who thought being mean was the same as being honest. The person who confused cruelty with courage. And they would remember Harrison Ford, not just as an actor, not just as a movie star, but as someone who knew his worth. Someone who wouldn't accept being treated poorly, even on live television, even by someone with a microphone and a platform. The story of what happened that morning would spread far beyond the studio walls. It would become a cautionary tale about the importance of treating people with respect, no matter who they are, about the dangers of letting power go to your head, about what happens when you mistake a platform for permission to be cruel. For Lara Spencer, the morning had started normally. She had walked into the studio like she did every other day, confident and prepared. She had no idea that in just a few hours, she would become known not for her interviewing skills or her journalism, but for the day she went too far and paid the price. For Harrison Ford, it was just another reminder that in Hollywood, as in life, respect is earned, not demanded. And when someone shows you who they really are, you should believe them. Lara Spencer had shown everyone exactly who she was that morning. And Harrison Ford had shown her exactly what happens when you disrespect someone who knows their worth. The cameras had captured it all. Every word, every expression, every moment of the confrontation. And those cameras didn't lie. They showed the truth. Lara Spencer attacking. Harrison Ford defending himself. The other hosts trying to intervene. The moment when Harrison decided he had had enough. It was all there, preserved forever, a permanent record of what happens when someone in a position of power forgets that with that power comes responsibility. The responsibility to be fair, to be respectful, to be professional. Lara Spencer had forgotten that responsibility. Or maybe she had never really understood it in the first place. Either way, she had learned it that morning in the harshest way possible, in front of millions of viewers, with her co-hosts as witnesses, with Harrison Ford as her teacher. And the lesson was simple. Treat people with respect, or face the consequences when they refuse to accept anything less.